afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to a special discussion today with AKAM experts, the art of hospitality. We're very happy to have you, and we'll be talking today, delivering five-star service South Florida properties for an enhanced living experience. Just to start off with a little introduction of who we have kind of leading the discussion today. Just a brief introduction to myself. My name is David Ward. I'm a transition general manager here with AKAM and Miami Beach. We also have Mr. Christopher Christie. He's a regional director with AKAM. And also we have Hendrick Fernandez, a director of premier hospitality and training and development with AKAM in New York. But he also helps us quite a bit here in South Florida. Just to give you a little overview, just to give a little advance notice, kind of almost like a table of contents of what we're discussing today. We'll of course talk a little bit about the introductions, getting to know today's panelists. Why would you want to listen to us in terms of hospitality, and why do we have any kind of expertise or credibility in the area? Why are we here in general for that topic? What would be the purpose and mission of five-star hospitality training? Then we're going to cover a topic or a concept such as residential hospitality. What does that mean? What is the key role that board members play along with management and managers as a partnership? And then we'll finish everything with question and answer. So please, in the meantime, go into your chats and definitely let us know if you have any specific questions, and we'll try to answer those at the end of the discussion. So again, my name is David Ward. I'm a general manager here with AKAM in Miami Beach. I have 10 years of experience as a licensed CAM. I previously worked at the Marriott Oriental Miami Hotel, which was just actually a hotel that got 5 stars in all 3 facets for restaurant, hotel, and spa in 2012. One of just 2 properties in the state of Florida, with Aquilina was the other one. And I've also worked previously at Oceanside and Fisher Island. My current role at AKAM is serving as a general manager, and I assist with industry education, current topics in terms of legislation and business development. So moving right along to our expert panelist, Hendrick, please introduce yourself and give it a little bit of your personality, and let everyone know a little bit about more Hendrick Fernandez.
Thank you, David. Absolute pleasure to be joining this call today. Just to give you some context and some background on my experience, I have over 25 years of hospitality experience, which started in hotels. And David, since you dropped the 5-star status, I worked for the Ritz-Carlton, which was a 5-star, 5-diamond property, the Peninsula Hotel Group, which was also 5-star, 5 diamonds when I was there. And then my property management experience actually started working on site as a service team member in the luxury rental property management space. And I started my career as a porter, housekeeper, transitioned into a handyman, then a concierge, and then moved into the sales as a leasing agent, did really well, and was promoted to property manager. And that's where my passion for training and development really started. Ultimately, I became what was called a regional manager, overseeing training and development for New York, DC, and Boston at my previous employer, but always have had a passion for wanting to help people kind of achieve their highest ability, especially when it comes to hospitality. Being at the Ritz-Carlton for those years, I was really immersed in that culture of hospitality, and it's something that has helped me throughout every step, every piece of my trajectory of my career. And now that I'm with AKAM here, I am incredibly excited with the opportunity that we have now to share some of that same foundational hospitality teaching to our service team and our managers here in South Florida. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight talking to our folks, and I look forward to getting started on our conversation. Back to you, David.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hendrick. We're going to move over to our next panelist to introduce Christopher Christie, Regional Director with AKAM. Christopher, that is a hard person to follow. If you want to give us a little bit about yourself and your background, which is also quite extensive in hospitality.
Thank you very much, David. Yes. Well, I mean, After a career with hotels, I'm lucky to be a part of the AKAM team and partner very closely with Hendrick, and we meet all the time to bring the New York office and the Florida office together. And David, thank you for hosting today. So yes, after my 15 years with hotels, I converted over to condos and quickly saw that there was a space there where the condo side was rooted in property management, and yet my background was hospitality. And I used that opportunity to start teaching at FIU, where I've taught for the past 10 years as an adjunct professor. And I've used that to try to, and FIU is very interested in this, to try to get the students there to see that it's not just Ritz, Four Seasons, hotels, restaurants, Carnival Cruise, Disney. There's also AKAM and this really wonderful industry of what we're starting to call residential hospitality, where we can take the skills from the hotels and employ them in the condo setting. My role at AKAM is really twofold. One, to be a regional director, where I have a book of business that I support, and I support those managers and those boards and those communities. But I also am support and a partner for Hendrick, who runs the training and development, learning and development out of New York, and creates industry leading content that I am allowed to share with our teams here in South Florida. Your property, David, being one of the ones where we started the training. So it's a pleasure to be here today, and it's a pleasure to speak with both of you gents.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Christopher. We're going to move right along into kind of the heart of the discussion. Basically, why are we here? What is the purpose? What is the mission of five-star hospitality training for AKAM? Gentlemen, do you want to jump in on what this actually means in terms of the high-end experience, or what that means in terms of a management company?
Absolutely. You know, David, the property management industry as a whole has almost always been solely focused on ensuring that the properties are managed as effectively as possible, both financially and operationally. But there has almost always also been a noticeable lack of focus on ensuring that the homeowners, that the shareholders, that the customers also have a high-end level experience when dealing with their management company and with the on-site team that they interact with on a daily basis. And that's really where this kind of initiative has birthed from for us here at AKAM. And it starts with having our team members really understand the difference between hospitality and customer service, right? Many people think that they mean the same thing, and they are actually very, very different. And if I were a board member, right, understanding that these are the folks that have a direct impact on my quality of life, I would want my on-site team to have as many tools and as many resources available to them to ensure that they are equipped to meet the expectations of the board and of the shareholders. And that's really why this is such an important focus for us as a property management here at AKAM. We understand that our job is to manage properties, but we don't manage those properties for ourselves. We manage those properties for our customers, and hospitality is a key part of ensuring that they have that full experience of not just the building being operated properly, but our interactions with them, what they expect from us, their interaction with the on-site team, that is always going to be a hospitality focused environment, and that it's going to be an environment or an interaction that's focused on them walking away feeling good about that exchange in every single time. Chris, I don't know if you wanted to add something there.
No, Hendrick, I'll tell you, I think what's interesting is that you and I are getting together really for the first time. And what's been fascinating for me is how you and your background have matched with mine so well. And the content that we're bringing to these teams, I've done it a handful of times, this training down here in South Florida. You've done it many, many more times up in New York. But the way we do what Hendrick just explained is we all have to use the same language of hospitality. And how do we do it? Well, we have dozens and dozens of concepts that we share with our on-site teams so that they understand what our expectations are as the management company that are aligned with our communities and with what our boards and our owners are expecting. And not only have we been able to do it in new startups with buildings that are relatively new, but we've been successful with buildings that have employees that are tenured 15, 20, 25 years. And we're sharing this hospitality language with them, and they're getting reinvigorated into their own jobs so that they are doing them and seeing them in a different light. And one of the things, Hendrick, that we were speaking about earlier today, an example of these concepts is the difference between the function and the task, right? I may be a housekeeper, but really my function is to strengthen relationships and make the residents and the owners feel good about their decision to buy and live in a particular building. My task is to clean. My task is to use a vacuum. And okay. But when we start defining our terms and we start using this language the same way, these teams, the lights go off and they can live up to really the expectations of that building, which are the expectations of the board.
Very well said.
That next slide, David, was something we kind of fell into, which is the space between property management and hospitality, traditional hospitality, which we're starting to call residential hospitality. And AKAM, which I'm very appreciative of, has been very supportive of a class that we developed at FIU, at the hotel school at FIU. The first class was last October. It's a legitimate junior level class, and we're using it to explain the space that is now being occupied by residential hospitality. And before I turn it back to you, Hendrick, what we noticed was a lot of that, of the development in Miami, was on the higher end. And how do you take somebody who's been a property manager for 15 years, focused on, just as you explained, minimizing risk, taking care of the building, but maybe not focusing on relationship building and lifestyle? How do you put them into one of these new ultra luxury buildings? They struggle. But it's very easy for us to train someone from the hospitality world to come in and say, here, let us show you how we do it at AKAM.
Agreed. Very well said. And David, the other part of this too is we've kind of been focusing more right now on, just on our on-site teams and service providers in particular. But, part of what Chris and I are also focused on is how do we ensure that our managers that are managing these teams, how do they have the tools and the resources to be able to effectively manage their people, to keep them motivated, keep them engaged so that they're consistently performing at that level of expectation. So that kind of really sums up the reason why we're here and what we're going to be talking about today. And again, I know Chris is excited and I'm excited to dive in and really kind of share, some of our best tips, our best practices, and how we do that here at AKAM.
Excellent, guys. The only thing I would say, if you just go back really quickly, because you were talking both about the management role and how we can bring in that for the high-end experience. I think that what came to mind as well is this is a great opportunity for, especially obviously AKAM properties or any property, and specifically for a competitive advantage. What can be a competitive advantage when you're talking about Hendrick, running the property on the operational level? Well, certainly things like financials and the accuracy thereof can be a competitive advantage for your management company or team, but also for your property level at a property basis. How can you compete with your neighbors when a lot of times that's what board members are actually concerned about? And I think this is an area where you can really stand out, and on a property basis, we're going to talk about a little bit more of that later in terms of branding.
And just to toot AKAM's horn a little bit here too, I mean, AKAM is one of the only property management companies right now that has a training and development department. So this, kudos to them for really, making this a priority in how they execute and how they do business every day.
Yeah, and Hendrick, I'll just add again to our conversation from earlier today, and David just mentioned branding. While we've started these trainings, we're really starting to see everyone is going to be specified to the individual building, right? Because somebody south of 5th on Miami Beach has a different feel, has a different, whether what the music sounds like in the lobby, what the diction, the script that the valet says or the front desk says is going to be different than in Aventura or in Fisher Island or one of these places. And so, David, I think one of the advantages that we can bring is how do we tailor make this training to live up to the exact expectations of what that board and that community needs. And we're starting to do that now.
Absolutely.
Definitely. One of the next kind of topics we wanted to talk about, gents, is the role of the board members and management, right? How does this all come into play when you're trying to both train and deliver results of a 5-star hospitality basis? Maybe Chris, you want to start with that in terms of how important it is for, hiring and the selection process of your team?
Yeah, I do. I appreciate that, David. And, the effort and the thanklessness that goes into being a board member of a condo, we really can't say thank you enough to the board members, right? This is the industry I chose and Hendrick chose. I love what I do. I get to do it every day. I can come home and I don't live in the building where I'm a volunteer board member. So thank you to all the board members. So what we do is partner with them in such a way that they are comfortable knowing that we're trusted advisors. We're the subject matter expert when it comes to the options that they have available to them when it comes to operating their building. And I really do see it, and I'm curious, Hendrick, how you see it, that the operational excellence that you spoke about, David, is very, very important. I think frequently we have accountants on our boards, we have attorneys on our boards. I think they have expectations about the operational excellence, but I think about our conversation today, how do we get them excited about new branding opportunities through hospitality and through training is a differentiator for us. So when you add somebody like Hendrick, who's at the helm of this training and development department with his background, the way that he has it, and we have an extension down here in South Florida, so we can touch all of our properties, we're really bringing industry-leading techniques and concepts that when we share them with board members, and it happened at your place, as soon as I made 2 or 3 comments and your board started talking about branding, they started talking about uniforms, they started talking about music in the lobby, and that's something unique that I think that AKAM does better than anyone else in the industry.
Yeah, well said, Chris. And the other side of this coin is, and you alluded to this, is we can certainly train our teams on what hospitality is and what that looks like, but every property is nuanced, right? And every board has different expectations. So we partner with the board. I mean, that the role they play in this is that they need to let us know what exactly are their expectations when it comes to what should hospitality look like at our home, right? So what is the experience that they want to have when they come home and they're walking through that lobby and they go to the front desk and they're getting their package, or when they're home and they have to call down to the front desk to ask a question about a situation or put in a work order or a request, or if there's a situation in their apartment and one of our service team members is going in there to diagnose or to assess. Those customers, they have an expectation of what that experience should be like. We should not make assumptions on what that should be. We need to partner with the board so that they explain to us, this is what we want to experience in our home. This is what the level of service that we expect, what it looks like. And then our job is to then take that, make sure that the service team fully understands what those expectations are and give them those tools and those resources and the training so that they can do that. And then partner with, the resident managers and the property managers to ensure that they understand what they need to do to hold those teams accountable, to reward those teams when they meet expectations, and to be able to provide guidance, right, and direction when those expectations aren't met.
100%. For me, the one thing that also comes to mind with the partnership with the board and management is kind of setting the tone, right? So to your point, Hendrick, we want to cater the property to the tone that the board and management wants to set. And even things like, in terms of, someone might be listening and say, well, what does this all mean in terms of 5-star hospitality? One of the biggest things is just intentional language and body language and choice of words. So, from the board also, that can be very hopefully supportive for the staff, and then a manager, an assistant manager, an admin, and then of course the front desk, which is your first kind of interaction as residents, often either in person or guests in person, often over the phone as well. is setting that tone of what kind of language choice do you choose to use. That's something that I learned, right off the bat at the Mandarin Oriental, and hopefully carry it with me the whole way. And I'm sure both you gentlemen and as well, language can be very powerful, and just kind of being very, very intentional of how you choose to use your words rather than something informal.
Hendrick,
Absolutely.
Can I jump in super quick?
Of course.
That's why I'll tell you, David, that's why the importance of having managers like our managers are so crucial. Not only because of the operational excellence and operating the bill, but because our managers are able to continue to drive the concepts that we're training on. So if Hendrick or I show up and we do a great training and everybody's excited, if the manager doesn't continue that, then it dies over a couple of weeks. And another differentiator for us is the quality of our managers. There's no way around it. Our managers can do it. And that has been exciting for me to see the handful of times that I've done it, your place included, where I know I'm confident that when I leave, the board is still going to be pleased with that experience that we left behind because the manager drives it.
Absolutely. David, I love the fact also that you mentioned intentional language, because not to give away too much out of the toolbox, but one of the things that we talk about when we go on site and we do the hospitality training for our service team members is we tell them, you want to start elevating the level of service that you provide for your customers here. It starts with how you communicate with them. Simply put, the next time someone says thank you to you for something, you hand them a package and they say thank you. You open the door and they say thank you. Don't say no problem. Don't say I got you. Don't say it's my job. You say you're welcome, or you say it's my pleasure. You say I'm glad I could be of service. And that starts to change the atmosphere. That simple language, that simple intentional usage of language starts to change the atmosphere in a community, and that starts to spread. And residents and homeowners and shareholders, they start to notice that right away. And it simply starts with how we communicate with our customers.
And Hendrick, and that becomes a part of the culture of the building.
Absolutely.
And a part of the brand, where each month goes by and we're being nicer and we're being more pleasant and we're looking around with it, so that is a great point. And Hendrick, you taught me the value of the word intentional, and I'm starting to use that more, because we really do have to be, we have to be intentional about those things.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah, it's definitely something that can't be done off the fly, or kind of just hoping for the best.
Yeah, you have to make it happen. You have to make it.
All right, so gentlemen, both, one of the questions I definitely wanted to talk to, and we can kind of look to, if there's some, participant questions as well for those. Thank you joining it again for those that are joining us today. We hear that term all the time, 5-star, 5-star this, 5-star hotel. A lot of times we're talking about bridging the gap from residential hospitality from hotel. When you think of hospitality or 5-star, I think most people right away, they think about hotels. But what does 5-star mean in general, maybe for hotel, and what does it mean for condominiums in terms of what it means, or how people feel when they think they're experiencing 5-star?
You want to go first, Hendrick? Or?
Go ahead, Chris.
I'll tell you, David, it's funny. 5-star. Now, when I hear that, I just think of excellence, right? So, and when we think about some of our, or a lot of our residents and our owners, when they go to the doctor, or they go to their accountant, or they go to get their car serviced, when they walk in, they're hearing their names, right? I mean, they're hearing, welcome, Mr. Christie, welcome, Mr. Fernandez. And if we're not even doing that at the basic level of when they walk through the front door of their own condo, we have a lot of ground to make up. And so when I hear 5-star, it is a term that's a little bit nebulous, but I always explain it as that just simply means excellent. And we haven't spoken a lot about relationships, Hendrick, but that comes through in how strong that relationship is with that front desk person, or that housekeeper, or that manager, and that individual owner, and knowing the specifics. What did we call them in at the Ritz? Preferences, knowing their anniversaries, knowing their birthdays, using that information to strengthen that relationship. When I hear 5-star, that's what it makes me think of, Hendrick.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I also think that 5-star for me is it's it's almost a branding thing, right? And you recognize when you see 5-star, you automatically think of all of these high-end luxury brands. You think of the Ritz-Carltons, the Peninsulas, the Mandarin Orientals. You think of the Rolexes, the Mercedes. You think of the, you know, the fancy restaurants, and that's ultimately, you know, what the expectation that I want to set on our service teams is, regardless of where you work, regardless of where you are, regardless of your role, whenever you engage with a homeowner or a shareholder or whomever, you need to engage. They need to feel seen. They need to be heard. They need to feel recognized. In the midst of you doing your job, acknowledge, right? Show value, show appreciation. That to me is what 5-star stands for. It stands for no matter what I'm doing, and I give the example of when I was a porter, you know, and part of my job was to vacuum floors and hallways, and I would vacuum the carpets, and I want to make sure that people saw me doing my job. And then a resident would open up their door, and you know, that vacuum is kind of loud and it's kind of disturbing, and you know, but I'm vacuuming and I look over and I say, hey, good morning, but that vacuum's going, and they're like, hey, Hendrick, and I'm like, huh? Oh yeah, how you doing? I mean, but I'm thinking, I'm doing my job, I'm vacuuming, right? This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But that resident is, you know, it's almost disruptive, and yeah, they see me doing what I'm doing, but they don't feel valued. They don't feel appreciated in that moment. It's very different if I'm vacuuming and that resident opens that door and I acknowledge them. I shut that vacuum off. I say, good morning, Mr. Christie. How are you today? It's nice to see you. Oh, let me get the elevator button for you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And then when he's gone, then I go right back to doing my job. Now, they saw me doing my job, but I also was able to acknowledge and interact with them and give them that hospitality service that we want every person to experience when AKAM is their property management company. That to me is what 5-star is.
Yeah, and Hendrick, I also want to say that's the importance of our training, because the story that you just told, which was excellent, is difficult. You know, it might not be intuitive for the housekeeper to realize the importance of that, of stopping the vacuum to engage. And to your point, that's what's very important about reaching that 5-star level and that level of excellence. So that's a great story, Hendrick.
Chris, share that story you shared with me earlier about the janitor in NASA.
Yeah, you know, similar to the story that you just shared, there was a janitor at NASA, and this speaks to the difference between function, which we're going to say is a hospitality function, which is based in relationships and making people feel a certain way, than service, which may be transactional. So there's a difference between the function, which is relationship, and task. And at NASA, when they asked the janitor, he was literally in the bathroom, they said, what are you doing? The janitor responded, I'm helping to put a person on the moon. And that speaks to that difference between the very, very important function and the urgency driving task, which is cleaning or those types of things. And we share those concepts with the team, and they resonate very well.
That's 5-star to me. The fact that you can ask a housekeeper while they're vacuuming a floor, what are you doing? They're saying, I'm creating a warm and welcoming environment for my homeowners, right, or for people, my customer, instead of I'm vacuuming a carpet, right? That's 5-star to me.
Right.
Right. And the thing that I would pull from that comment to Hendrick, and also your story, Chris, is when you said, what's 5-star to you? It's definitely excellence, right? I totally agree that there's like a high standard that has to be associated to 5-star in terms of being the best, whereas, you know, the best that you can try to possibly be. But I don't think it stops at excellence alone, because you can think of other brands, and we keep talking about branding, whether it be, you know, a luxury vehicle, for example, is, you know, Rolls-Royce or Lamborghini might be considered like excellence in terms of the machinery. But is it by itself, unless you're at one of their events, right? Is it by itself hospitality? So I think to add to the excellence, you have to show that you truly, sincerely care. If you care and you deliver that message through your actions, through your energy, through your smile, that the other person's situation is actually important to you, and that their experience or their resolution of a problem is important, that you care, now you're really onto something special, because you're already trying for a higher standard. But it's not just you trying to look good, it's beyond that. You know, you care about the other person.
Yeah, and David, to your credit, I saw you in action at your place. We were literally having a conversation, and you walked away from me because someone needed you. and you cared right away, and it was a wonderful thing to see. So credit to you because you live that message.
Oh gosh, I'm blushing here. Moving on quickly to more questions and answers. I wanted to see if you guys wanted to talk about, and I know this is an open dialogue, but can we talk a little bit more without getting into too much detail? What is the difference between that kind of doing my job, doing the service only, transactional versus individual relationships, and how this all kind of ties into hospitality?
Sure, Chris, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to kick this off. For me, that difference is similar to the difference between hospitality and customer service, right? And one of the things that I learned at the Ritz is customer service is about what we do for people, the act of doing something. In my example of being a porter, vacuuming the carpet, customer service is my vacuuming that carpet. I'm doing my job, right? This is what I'm supposed to do. Residents want to walk out of their apartment and see a nice clean rug. That's part of my job. I have to vacuum this carpet. That's customer service to me, versus hospitality, which hospitality is really about how you make people feel, right? That's the difference between customer service and hospitality. And what I do, how I interact, how I show up has a very noticeable and intentional impact on someone else. And if I'm focused on ensuring that no matter what I do, that this person feels like, again, that I'm paying attention, I am available, I am empathetic, I'm listening, I'm acknowledging, they feel heard. That is hospitality. And a lot of times people think that for us to provide a high level of hospitality, that we have to say yes to everything. And I would argue that's not true. I think because even in the act of saying no to someone, that we cannot do something or provide some sort of request or resolution in that moment, you can still provide a high level of hospitality by being empathetic, being extremely professional, being respectful, but also by offering up alternative options and giving them other possible solutions that we might be able to do instead. And I think that speaks to kind of that difference, right? That difference between task and responsibility, or I would even say like task and purpose of a role, right? It's, we do have duties that we have to do, but our duties are not and should not be our primary focus.
They're secondary.
Our primary focus needs to be ensuring that our homeowners and our shareholders have a remarkable experience on a daily basis. And we have the ability to directly impact that in a positive or a negative way.
Yeah, well said, Hendrick. And two things, and Ritz really does a very good job of I was going to say beating that into their teams, but of really focusing on that. And they would say it's a part of their culture that as soon as you see an opportunity to make a connection with somebody, that immediately becomes your priority. So I think, Hendrick, that's an excellent point. And then the other thing, David, I want to share is to as an example of how we help our teams understand this and the difference between customer service and hospitality are the concepts that we share with them. And one of them is this idea of the experience economy. And the experience economy is, I am a part of the experience economy. Many of our owners and residents are part of the experience economy. My father is not, right? He doesn't go to concerts. He doesn't live in fancy. It's not what he's about. But for us, and in our buildings, the experience that the person feels is value. And if somebody walks into a building and the person doesn't stand up and smile, then that experience is decreased. And that person's thinking, okay, I do not feel good about this, right? I do not feel that I made a wise decision spending the thousands of dollars to live in this association. And our goal is to explain to the teams, you have to put on that person's sensibilities and appreciate the experience economy, because it might just be a smile to you, but it's not. It's a part of that experience that the owner feels, and then even going further, a part of the brand of that hotel. So to answer your question, David, and Hendrick nailed it out of the gates, the concepts that we share really help our teams understand the direction and the goal of what we're trying to get to.
Well,
David, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Andrew.
I want to share one of the quotes that we use in our trainings is from Maya Angelou, right? And Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Awesome.
100%. And that can work on the negative as well, too, right?
Absolutely.
One of my biggest regrets actually in hospitality was where I kind of lost that. And I was a little bit too more operational, a little bit too more strict on the rules. And it's something that I'll probably never, for that particular person, never be able to kind of turn them around unless I have some grand opportunity to do so. But you learn from your mistakes a lot of times, right? And so the next question that I want to actually, we're running a little bit over, but I wanted to throw this out there. So someone listening will say, okay, Hendrick, Chris, this sounds phenomenal. You guys at AKAM have this specialized training in 5-star hospitality. So you're going to, what does that look like? You go to a property for the hospitality training, you're on site, you've scheduled it with the whole team, you've made it so that overnight front desk and afternoon front desk can also be there. You might have a lunch. What happens and what's supposed to happen after that? Are they, after 60 minutes of training, are they 5-star? Is that how it works?
Chris, you want to tackle this first?
Yeah, well, in South Florida, yeah, because and I'll be curious, Hendrick, to hear if it's different in New York. But so for us, when we're doing our trainings, we're training the whole team, including the manager, because the manager has to know what we're talking about, has to buy into it, and frequently is going to contribute to the slides. And to Hendrick's credit, the content, which is not just slides of words and all that, it's movie clips, it's TV clips, it's very engaging, fun, funny, because we've all seen these movies and we might not have realized how relevant they are to hospitality or the difference between that and service. So we do that as kind of a team together, and then it's up to the manager, the regional director, and then myself to ensure, let's call it quality assurance visits, to make sure that on a daily basis, the manager is there to watch and make sure if we've decided we're going to stand up and say good morning and use the person's name, then the manager has to drive that, right? And the regional director, when the regional director comes by 2-3 times a week, the regional director is looking. And if the person's not doing it, is going to say, please do it, and tell the manager, listen, do we need another training? What also is happening is that we're coming up with a progressive curriculum. So we've started with our beginning concept, which is making sure that people understand the importance of how you make people feel doing your jobs, the hospitality side. And then as each month goes by, we're going to have another subject. And it's very specific to the building. Your building is going to have one particular training, which is going to be about preferences. It's going to be very ritzy, preferences and special requests. But we have another building that is going to, they literally have a synagogue in this building. And we're going to talk about holiday. How do we operate during the holidays? Because that's very important to them. So, David, it's two things. It's making sure that the training is specified to that property, but also making sure the manager, the regional director, and myself or Hendrick help drive what that training was all about.
Yes. Well said, Chris. And David, I want to reinforce a little bit first what Chris said here about part of what we're doing, or a major part of what we're doing, is ensuring that the managers, the on-site managers, fully understand what the expectations will be of that team moving forward. Because Chris and I can go to a property every day for 3 months straight and do training and do training and do training. But once we don't manage the property, we don't work with the teams on a daily basis. That's the responsibility of our managers. So we want to ensure that our managers understand what it is that we're training them on, so that they then can hold them accountable. And, when they see something, say, hey, remember when, Chris was here and we talked about this, I noticed that maybe you didn't stand when that person walked in the lobby. Remember, we talked about this during that hospitality training. And that accountability, that reinforcing of that messaging is what's ultimately going to get people to, start, it's going to influence the people to start meeting those expectations that we're going on site to train for. Regarding your original question, I want to say, I think what you will notice after we start doing this training are initially there will be small changes in behavior that maybe to the I don't even want to say the untrained eye, but to someone that's not really paying attention, you may not notice. But if I'm a homeowner and I come home every day, and I notice that every day that I come home, the door person or the concierge is sitting there and is usually on their phone and barely raises their head up to acknowledge me or say good afternoon or welcome home. But I start noticing that now when I come home, they look up and they smile, they stand and they greet me. I start noticing these little things. I start noticing change in vocabulary now. When I say thank you, they say, oh, it's my pleasure. And I start going, something's different. There's something, I don't know that I could put my finger on it, but something feels different, right? And we talk about this with our service teams when we do our training. We say, look, there's nothing wrong with saying no problem when someone says thank you. But we want to be different at AKAM. We want to elevate the level of service at AKAM. So when our customers go to visit their friend at another property that's managed by, XY property management company, and they walk in there and the concierge is on their phone and they don't look up and they say, hi, I'm here to visit, John in 5B. And they go, yep, just around the corner to the left, and they're still on their phone. And then when their friends come to visit them at the AKAM property and they go upstairs and go, your front desk is so professional, and they're I don't know, they seem so like they're so friendly and they smile and they acknowledge. Those are the things that you're going to start to notice once your property starts to get those trainings, right? Those little things that will certainly become, and those things are intuitive, right? It's like, you naturally, when you start to change your vocabulary, when you start to change your behavior, there are going to be other things that are going to start happening that are going to start changing for the better. And our homeowners and our customers will start to see those changes, happen as we start going and training and providing these resources for the teams.
Right. And I would also say, Hendrick, too, that from my experience, the homeowners really do notice. They're very observant on front desk and the performance of front desk or communications, especially in the management office as well. But we tend to think about hospitality a little bit more at front desk for condominiums. And I would say in terms of operations we talked about, right, from the management side, my priorities as a manager that I always say is I better be having cool air conditioning in my units, and I better have working elevators, right? But right there, besides those two items in terms of, priority, is how well your front desk team does, how they carry themselves, and how they basically serve to hopefully a high level to all your residents. So I think they notice, even if it might not be a quote unquote trained eye, I think they're very observant on their homes, because that's where they live.
Agreed.
Well, I think we've gone a little bit over, if that's okay. I don't know, Hendrick or Chris, if you have any other kind of final thoughts before we go. It's almost about 45 minutes here. I think we've had a great discussion.
I just want to say to the folks that are listening right now, the reason why we are doing this, the reason why this all started is because ultimately what AKAM wants is, again, to really provide our customers, our homeowners, our shareholders with an elevated level of service that maybe they haven't experienced somewhere else. And we want that to be what our customers experience every time they come home. And our desire is that this may spark some interest in them, and they may say, maybe you don't have, maybe you don't have that much opportunities with your teams on site. People always say, our teams are great. And I would argue, and I'm sure Chris would agree, even for the most high level performing service teams on site, we can always provide some sort of resource, some sort of training that's going to help elevate that service. And that's ultimately what we want to see for all of our customers, is for them to have that high level of hospitality experience, to have that be, that feeling when they come home. We want everyone to come home and feel acknowledged and feel welcomed, and come home to a smiling face, come home to someone that's going to be willing to help them and is available to provide, recommendations or ultimately solutions to their problem, someone that they enjoy communicating with. And that's what we believe is what they will experience out of this. That is our goal. Our goal is to have, when people think of AKAM, we want people to say, oh, AKAM, yep, that's that property management company where everyone is super friendly and they're always engaging and they're always attentive, and that's where you should live. Chris, I'll give you the last word.
No, I appreciate it, Hendrick. Well said. And I just want to thank you for letting me be a part of it down here in South Florida. I think your content is first class in the industry. It's amazing. So it's a pleasure to be able to share it with our South Florida team. And David, it's always great to work with you, sir. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, David.
I noticed on my calendar, we have another training set up. Well done, sir.
That's what it's about. It's about the reinforcement. And thank you both. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We know it's been a little bit longer than we expected, but we do think it's been well worth the time. If you do want to reach out to any of our panelists, with Hendrick Fernandez, we do have our email address here, hfernandez@akam.com. Christie is available at cchristie@akam.com. So that would be 2 C's in the beginning. I'm David Ward. My email is dward@akam.com. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes at AKAM that got this, off the ground for us. And we hope you have a 5-star week.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Well done.